People who went out and changed the world are the people who are the most different. They're not average. They have sensitivities that the rest of the world doesn't have. And the more I read about successful people, the more I saw, when you first start reading about successful people, their stories seem different. Their stories seem unique.
So the big question is this: how these entrepreneurs who started from scratch and had no idea how to sell or market their products or services online, and then later on made over 6 figures, 7 figures, or even 8 figures, became best in their niches and found their dream customers to sell. My name is rjahmed, and find this all out in our Interviews with Entrepreneurs show. I interviewed these entrepreneurs and tried to pick their brain of how they actually did that and how they took their business as well as their life to the next level. This podcast is all about the entrepreneurs who strive so hard to become super awesome in their niches. Welcome to Interviews with Entrepreneurs. Welcome to Interviews with Entrepreneurs show, where we interview entrepreneurs who are super awesome in their niches. And guys, we have a special guest today on our podcast, Alex Charfen. If you don't know who Alex is an entrepreneur, author, speaker, coach who spent over 3 decades in entrepreneurship and business in general. Not only that, he's also the founder and CEO of Simple Operation, which helps tens of thousands of entrepreneurs out there on 6, 7, 8 figure and even like beyond to simplify their business and processes so that they can grow faster using Simple Operation. We're going to talk about a lot of things around that as well. So please welcome Alex Charfen.
Hey, Alex. Thank you, RJ. Dude, that intro was awesome.
Thanks, man. Truly appreciate it. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, thanks. I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. So if people are living under the rock and they haven't got the idea, like how was the journey been? Could you walk us through a brief backstory, like how things started for you initially?
Sure, I'll make it brief. So, I always share I was a very different kid. I did not get along well socially. I didn't get along with other students. I didn't get along with teachers. I always felt like I was kind of on the outside looking in, like I think a lot of entrepreneurs do. And as a result, I started working when I was really young. Actually, I started working when I was really young with my father because I needed to. But as soon as I started, for reasons for our family, but as soon as I started working in business, I found this place where I felt like I belonged. Business, people always say, how did you find entrepreneurship? I felt like entrepreneurship found me. My dad is an entrepreneur. As soon as I started understanding that I could use business as a vehicle for success, even when I was really young, I became obsessed with it. And that obsession has lasted for most of my life. I'm turning 50 in 10 days. And so I've been an entrepreneur now for well over 30 years, because I think my first entrepreneurial venture probably started before I was 10, or did start before I was 10. I had my first real company when I was in high school, and then in college, I had 2 different companies. And, I've always been obsessed with this thing we call success, but more importantly, how do I create success in the world for myself? And entrepreneurship has been the vehicle that has been most exciting for me.
Wow, this is it's super interesting out there, and and it happens with a lot of people out there. For some people out, for them, a scenario created, why they becomes an entrepreneur. It comes an environment or a surrounding or something happens that how they go in and become an entrepreneur, and that's something similar happens in your case as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of entrepreneurs are those people. We're different than the rest of the world, and I think that there's not a lot of discussion around just how different we are than the world around us. When I look at entrepreneurs, I have this lens that I think is different than most people. I've been, so I'll give you a little bit more of my backstory, because it'll inform what I'm about to share with you. When I was younger, I felt like I was a complete failure. In school, I felt like I was failing. With friendships, I felt like I was failing. Every once in a while, I had a teacher that was like a really good teacher. And honestly, there was 2 or 3 of them that saved my life when I was younger. And, But in most cases, I felt like I really wasn't doing well. But what I really felt like was I was different from everyone around me. I felt like I was a party of one. I felt like I was the only person who felt like I did. And, that drove me to try and figure things out. And so as a kid, really young, I started reading personal development books. I was reading Tony Robbins and Wayne Dyer and Bandler and Grindler. And, if I was socially awkward before, I became infinitely more socially awkward after that. I was in like third or fourth grade and the teacher's saying, okay, we're going to write an essay. And I'm like, but wait, what's our inspiration? And what does this have to do with the intention we have for our lives? Is this going to connect to source? And teachers did not think that was very funny, but I was being serious. And what happened was through studying personal development, I started to see some contradictions in personal development books. I don't know if this has happened to you, RJ, but if you read enough personal development, you have one book that contradicts one that you just read. And then another book tells you that the first book you read is totally invalid. And there was
100%.
you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
There was so much cognitive dissonance for me that I kind of pulled out of that and said, okay, so how do I figure out this thing called success? And what that started was this lifelong obsession with learning about wildly successful people in history. I've read thousands of third-party accounts, articles, autobiographies, biographies. It's been like this background obsession of mine of figuring out what makes people successful. And here's what's interesting, RJ. When I first started reading about successful people, I thought I was going to find this code, this key, these attributes, these qualities that they had that were totally different from me, and these things that I had to take on. But the more I read about successful people, the more I found validation and comfort and familiarity. When you read about wildly successful people, here's what you find. They're different than the rest of the world. They're wildly different
100%.
than the rest of the world. Thomas Edison was sent home from school at 5 years old because they couldn't teach him because he was too slow. Albert Einstein failed algebra. When we look throughout history, Richard Branson has just incredibly severe dyslexia. You look at throughout history, the people who went out and changed the world are the people who are the most different. They're not average. They have sensitivities that the rest of the world doesn't have. And the more I read about successful people, the more I saw, when you first start reading about successful people, their stories seem different. Their stories seem unique and individual. But when you read enough, you start seeing these patterns that emerge. And what I saw was that, today, society has this equation that if somebody shows up and they don't look like everyone else, read like everyone else, act like everyone else, learn at the same pace and the same speed and the same way that everyone else, that is a broken person. We need to diagnose, assign a disorder, medicate, and make them like everyone else. And what history shows us is the people who showed up that didn't look like everyone else, talk like everyone else, learn at the same pace of everyone else, those are the people who actually change the world. And, in the study and the research that I've done, I've come to the conclusion that, there's this subpopulation in the world of people who think like you and I do, of people who think like your last guest, Russell Brunson does. Russell and I have been friends for a long time. And when I look at all of us collectively, I think we're completely different than the rest of the world because we are that small percentage of the population that if it was 10,000 years ago, we are the evolutionary hunters. We are the people that throughout history got up every day and went out and exposed ourselves to the vulnerability and the pain and the risk and the risk of life to keep the human tribe alive. And when I look at entrepreneurs of today, that's who we are. That's who we've always been. And there is thousands of years that have programmed us to get up every day, do whatever it takes to move forward, do whatever it takes to create momentum in our lives to move things forward. And that's who we are.
Yeah, it's so interesting that you, the way that you mentioned around it. It somehow got in my mind the ad that Apple ran, in 83, 84.
One
that
of the best ads
against
in history.
yeah, exactly.
I
The
remember when I
IBM one,
first saw that ad, I cried.
Yeah.
You go ahead and share which one it was.
Yeah, because it actually, gets to the exact same point that you mentioned. The rest of the people out there following what the rest of the people are, going into that particular category. But for an entrepreneur in general, they have different thinking, different way of life, or how they think about it, or things like that. It just comes to that particular point, as you mentioned around that. Speaking of that, I'm super
By the way,
curious.
I think we should just let everybody know that Apple ad that ran in 1983 was an ad that had a voiceover by Steve Jobs that starts with "Here's to the crazy ones." And God, I get a little emotional even when I think about it now, because I remember, I think I was about 12 or 13 years old the first time I saw that ad. And it was when Steve Jobs became one of my heroes. Not for what he had done before. I already respected him for that. But just the fact that he put that out into the world was life-changing for me. And my friend Emily Hirsch actually gave me 3 different pieces of artwork that have all of the text from that ad in 3 different
Wow.
frames here in my office. And every time I get up to go like use the restroom, anytime I get up and pass that ad, I like look at it and I remember, the rest of the world may see us as crazy, but the reality is everything around you was created by one of us. The devices we're talking on, the chairs we're sitting in, the homes the buildings we're in, the world is created by entrepreneurs. And we are the only source of consistent, positive human evolution. And we always will be.
Yeah, that's so awesome, and that's so true out there. I will link up the ad. I will find somewhere link up the ad for people if they haven't, if they were under the rock, they haven't saw that. Just go and watch that ad as well. I'm super curious to ask around that is later down the road. I think it was last year or so, or like earlier this year, you actually rebranded your company name from Charfen to Simpler Operation. On the scale you are at the moment, it's not actually that easy to do it. Somebody who's actually starting out might go in and change the name. Not. So what made you at this point, or how hard it was for you to just rebrand everything and go from, I would say, like the personal brand to like making it more, massive in general. Like, what was your thought around that?
RJ, one of the issues that we consistently experienced with people who didn't know who I was that we had to explain first who I was, then what we did as a company and what we do as a company. And we would hear from people who were in our membership that it was hard for them. So and I'll share what we do so that this has context. When you look at Simple Operations and what we do in the company that Katie and I run is we show entrepreneurs the systems, the processes, the routines that will help them consistently grow a business without having to do it all themselves and without feeling overwhelmed. And when I figured out, when we heard from our members that like our brand was actually making it harder for them to work with us, we got very serious about saying, how do we correct this? How do we fix this? I don't need to be the brand. In fact, if me being the brand is in the way of people being able to simplify their businesses and grow and scale their businesses and going out and making a massive impact, then that became the number one thing that we had to change. And so we went through a very intense process with a friend of mine named Andrea Rendell, who is an absolute genius. And she gave us a series of questions to ask, a series of frameworks to go through with our team to really understand what it is that we do and how do we put that brand out there. And I remember we were here in my house and we were talking through it and we had our team here. We were down in our conference room in the basement and we were talking through it and we had all these words on the board and somebody said Simple Operations. I don't remember if it was me. It might've been my wife, but she immediately looked it up and we got the URL and it was available. It was not inexpensive, but it was available. And so we bought it and we rebranded into a brand where, it was interesting. Almost immediately, people started telling us that it was easier to sell us to their team, to sell the processes to the team that they had. Almost immediately, people started calling us and asking about operations, not asking about me and who I was. And so it was a massive shift. It has it's been really good for us as a company because now people in the brand name know exactly what we do.
Yeah, yeah. And I remember, I think I saw your email out there when you said like, it happened for the very first time when somebody got in and that person didn't even knew about you, who you were, and they were getting it into that service or the program itself. And you were like, that is actually what I wanted.
That's exactly what we wanted. What we realized was in order for somebody to work with us, you want to make or I'll personalize this. I want to make the experience of coming and working with us as frictionless as possible. I want to make it easy for somebody to understand what we do, to sign up with us, to get momentum right away, to start feeling like they're making progress, to feel like they're winning. And what we found was we had this massive friction in how we were in the marketplace because first people had to understand me. Then people had to sell me to their team. Then people had to sell our processes. And so there was this massive friction just around the brand. And it took us a few years to figure that out. And so when we made the change, you clearly read the email we sent out. It was like the best thing that ever happened. The first call we got where the salesperson said like, well, Alex always shares with our members. And the person said, who's Alex? And we're like, yes, we're winning. We've got people coming to us just for the solution and not for me. And we removed that friction.
Yeah, that's so amazing. Around that, since you've helped a lot of people out there, and tens of thousands, 6, 7, 8-figure businesses out there, get more productive with their teams, grow their businesses with more simple operations. What is the common pattern you saw, from getting to 6 to 7 figure, from 7 to 8 figures with team specific? So, like, what do you think about it? What's the structure looks like?
We have a framework that spells this out really clearly. It's called the Billionaire Code. Yeah, you can go to billionairecode.com to check it out. But I want to answer your question just from the perspective of, what are the things that it takes to go from 6 to 7 figures? And then what are the things that it takes to go from 7 to 8? When I look at most companies that are under 7 figures and having trouble hitting that first $1 million year, I'm not saying $1 million over time. I know Russell has the 2 Comma Club award that's $1 million over time. What I'm specifically talking about is hitting $1 million in a single year. And when I look at most of those organizations, here's what I see. I see an entrepreneur who has been conditioned that they need to do everything. So they continue to do everything. They don't get help. That gets them stuck. But I think when you look at the primary issues under 7 figures, one, the entrepreneur's not taking care of themselves. They are putting everything into the business at the sacrifice of at the sacrifice of themselves, at the sacrifice of their health, at the sacrifice of their families. And that can only go on for so long. Does entrepreneurship require some sacrifice? Does it require some hustle? Absolutely. But the problem is far too many people make that the business plan. And I think that holds a lot of entrepreneurs that are at 6 figures in place. The other thing that I see under 6 figures is that people are not clear on who they serve. They're not clear on what problem they actually solve. They have a product, they have an event, they have something that they're selling, but they're not clear on who is that exact person in the world whose problem they solve with their product. And that might sound elementary. Russell says 1 avatar, 1 funnel, one promotion all the way to $1 million, which works, but it doesn't work if you're not really clear on that avatar, that market. And I hear too many people who are at 6 figures say things. I'll say, so who do you work with? They'll say entrepreneurs, or they'll say married couples, or they'll say, I empower women, or I work with men who are having men's issues. And those are not markets. Those are not avatar. Those are markets. They're not an avatar. The avatar is, I work with entrepreneurs who have kids who, like my friend Larry Hagner, I work with entrepreneurs who have kids who are having a hard time running their business and balancing being a father. Or rather than saying I work with married couples, it's, I work with married couples who've been married over 10 years, who have lost intimacy and want to reconnect with each other. Like, get clear on exactly who that person is and what problem you solve. And that will get you to 7 figures faster than just about anything else. And then when you said, from 6 to 7, now from 7 to 8, it's a different story. 7 to 8 is about replacing yourself. It's about first delegating what you do, then delegating your time, and then having your team tell you what you should spend with your time in succession. The details for all of that are in the Billionaire Code. If you go to billionairecode.com and download it. And it's, the reality we face as entrepreneurs is that once you hit over $1 million, the business is going to grow and scale with your ability to replace yourself. That means your ability to replace yourself through process and structure. That means your ability to replace yourself with the systems that are running your business, whatever that tech stack is, whatever systems you have, your ability to replace yourself with people. And I think so many businesses stall out in the $1 to $2 to $3 million range because entrepreneurs don't replace themselves and don't realize that the most important thing at those numbers is not your ability to work in the business. It's your ability to build a team, lead that team, and have them grow the business. And, these shifts that we have to make are absolute. There's this saying in entrepreneurship, what got you here won't get you there. I'm sure you've heard it.
Yeah.
I don't look at it that way. I think that statement is far too generous. I tell people what got you here will kill you moving forward. It will stop your business growing moving forward. It will put you out of business moving forward. If you carry along the same habits that you had from 6 to 7 figures in the climb from 7 to 8 figures, here's the fact: you're not going to make it. You might have some good months, you might have some good years, you might have a peak. But when I look at entrepreneurs who make the decision that they are not going to build a team, they're not going to replace themselves, they're not going to step into leadership instead of just doing all the tactical work in the business, those are the entrepreneurs who get stuck, who have a peak and have a really great year, and then they're gone the next year. Those are the entrepreneurs who have health issues, who end up working themselves so hard that the business, for one reason or another, becomes not worth it. And when I say that, I know in the entrepreneurial mind, people say, well, how can my business not be worth it? Your business becomes really challenging when you're facing divorce, or when you're facing a crisis with one of your children, or when you're facing a personal health crisis. If we don't learn how to offload what we're doing, delegate what we're doing, get the help that we need, and build a team around us, it's very possible you'll face, not very possible, you will face a crisis. You just don't know which one it's going to be yet.
Yeah, that's so interesting, especially in the way that you mentioned around, and especially it's so true as well that most people, especially entrepreneurs, have this, I believe, like kind of like a ego, or they feel like they're the person who's the best person out there to do whatever the task they're actually doing, not like delegating it. Especially in the starting extent, they definitely think about, even on some other level, they also think about that as well. But yeah, like I will first of all post up the billionaire code down below in the comment section, and also in the show notes. The people who don't have it, it's amazing. It's a game changer, absolutely. Because for me, I had this exact same issue on the current level, even I was, but it actually just shifted my sort of, first of all, mindset around the team building, how you should go in and do it. So it became more easier for me, rather than just going for a hustle mode and, like, not making it work out anything.
Yeah, I want to say something about what you just said. For us as entrepreneurs, if we stay in that place of feeling like everybody is coming to the business for us, we're the only place that, here's what I hear from people all the time. People want me. They want to talk to me. They need me on the phone. I'm the only person who can do what I do. There's things that I can't delegate. There's things that I have to do in my business. And, we have this saying in our membership where we tell people, look, you're not a unicorn. And if they say, but there's these things, I'll say, look, you're not an effing unicorn, because I don't want any of us to let our ego get in the way of growing our business and making the change we can make in the world. And when we overtly state, I'm the only person who can do this, we have just committed to being the biggest bottleneck in the growth and contribution of our business. And that is going to stick, because you get yourself stuck in that place. And I can tell you now, having worked with thousands of businesses in the 30 plus years that I've been an entrepreneur, as soon as the entrepreneur lets go of that feeling that everybody's coming to the business for them, as soon as the entrepreneur lets go of that thing saying, I'm the only person who can do this, that's when businesses truly grow and scale. And, I look at some of the examples we have in the world today of some of the most incredible, the most intense, the most talented entrepreneurs that we've ever had on the planet. And I wonder what it would look like. Here's what I hear from entrepreneurs all the time. Well, I'm the only person who can write our nurture emails. I'm the only person who can do our finances. I'm the only person who can do our videos. Can you imagine if Richard Branson was like, I'm the only person who can write the nurture emails for every business that I'm a part of? Or if Elon Musk was like, no, I'm the only person who can run the finances for Tesla, SpaceX, Neuralink, Twitter, and all the other companies that he has. Can you imagine how crazy we would think that person is? Yet in the entrepreneurial space, when somebody says this in a mastermind or somewhere else, everybody goes, oh yeah, that's what you have to do. I step in and I say, you need to absolutely abolish that mindset, because it's going to hold you in place and stop you from doing what you want to do.
100%. You become kind of like a slave of that exact same thoughts that you already have in your mind for a longer term out there.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of us go into entrepreneurship because we want freedom. And you see people who give up a 9 to 5 so that they can have a 9 to 11. And I don't mean in the morning. And, we get into this place where we convince ourselves that people are coming to us for us. And the truth of the matter is, people are coming to you for a solution. People are coming to you to stop pain. They are not coming to you for you. Just because you hear that, just because you believe that, just because people have told you that, the reason they've told you that, the reason you believe that is because of the way you're presenting your business right now. RJ, it's a big part of the reason that our company is now called Simple Operation and not Charfen. I didn't want people to even expect that they would have interaction with me of any kind. I want them coming in for the solution of simplifying their operations or the business operations so that they can go grow the company they want, get their time back for their family, and go out and live the life and have the business that they want.
Yeah, so true. I don't want to take like so much of your time out there at the moment out there, but the last thing I want to ask from you is, how over the last 30 years, what are the top 3 things that made you productive as an entrepreneur?
My first answer is process, structure, and routine. I wake up every day with a morning routine. I use our company's momentum planning system every day.
Yeah.
Like you can see, here it is filled in for today. I have a structure around me and a scaffolding around me that ensures that I'm going to be productive and I'm going to be successful, because I plan every single day with the perspective of this is where I want to end up. And I think that's crucial for entrepreneurs. I think the second thing is, and this one's big, and it's taken most of my career, and it's something that I still work on all the time, is asking for help. As entrepreneurs, we need more help than the average person, because what we want to do is usually much more complicated, more complex. We need the input of other people. For most of us, the impact we want to make, the mission that we're on, is not a single person mission. And so we need to learn how to ask for help. And the problem for us as entrepreneurs is we have a history of interactions, of reinforcement, of programming, of conditioning, of trauma that makes it so that anytime we ask for help, we feel vulnerable and exposed. And we need to learn how to do it anyway. We need to learn how to ask for help within a system. We need to learn how to ask for help within a structure. We build a team around us and we ask them for help. And then I think, if there is one last thing besides process, structure, and routine and asking for help, it's learning just how to be yourself. And learning how to be myself and learning how to be transparent. I have a mild form of dyslexia. I never told anybody about it until I was in my 30s. I faked it before that. I pretended like I didn't have trouble reading cursive. I pretended like I could keep up sometimes when I was in meetings and I was feeling overwhelmed. The more authentic you are, the more real you are, the more you just tell people around you what's actually going on, the more those people can help you, the more those people will relate to you, and the more the people around you know exactly what they can do to help you move forward. And I think so many of us as entrepreneurs, the day that we declared ourselves an entrepreneur is the day we declare ourselves a commodity that now can be judged and harshly looked at and made fun of and criticized like crazy. I mean, Jesus, I feel like today in history, entrepreneurs are criticized more than they ever have been. You look at some of the people on this planet that are changing entire industries, changing how we interact with each other, changing the future of humanity, and they're just consistently criticized and condemned because they're too wealthy, they're too successful, they're doing too much, they've got too much power, they've got too much of this. It's crazy. And when you look at anyone on this planet, anyone, even Branson and Musk and Oprah Winfrey and everyone is working through something. Every one of us has our demons. And the more open and real we are about what's going on for us, the more the world around us relates to us and the more we can get what we really want.
Yeah, that's so true. It makes a lot of sense. Well, Alex, thank you so much for being on the show today out there. Where people can find about you and be the part of your world.
So I think the best place is, we've already mentioned it, go to billionairecode.com and you can download, the primary framework we use for coaching, the primary framework we use to grow our own business, the primary framework that we've shared with tens of thousands of entrepreneurs to grow theirs. And then since you're a podcast listener, I've got a podcast that's in the top 0.5% of podcasts. It's called Momentum for the Entrepreneurial Personality Type. And you can go to anywhere podcasts are listened to and type in Momentum for the Entrepreneurial Personality Type. It'll pull up. Or you can go to momentumpodcast.com, and we have over 800 episodes on different subjects that will solve a problem for you. And you can go use the search engine there to find exactly the podcast and the solution you're looking for.
Wow. So I'm going to post all of those resources in the comment section, also in the show notes down below. But Alex, thank you so much for being on the show today. It was absolutely amazing.
RJ, thank you, man. This was an absolute pleasure, and I appreciate you having me on.
Truly appreciate it. So yeah, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I will definitely going to see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.